Hi there, it's Kevin with GatheringMagic.com here with this week's episode of the Rogues Alley. Now, the Rogues Alley is going to be where I showcase my more rogue brews or update a playing on a budget deck without the budget constraints of the $100 or $200 respectively for standard or modern. This week what we're going to do is we're going to look at an enchantments build that doesn't have a budget constraint to it and just go wild with being able to play off the budget, play whatever cards we want. This is going to be a 4-color. Actually, it's going to be more like Bant Splash Black, because the black is just a very, very, very subtle splash in this deck. And I actually don't know which one's better than this non-budget version or the black-white enchantments playing a budget. They actually have a lot different feel to them, with the more mono-white splash black budget deck that we ran for Thursday having the kill condition 100% being either the blood-cursed vampires or the Sigil of the Empty Throne. Now this one's going to use Thopter Spy Network as its primary win condition, or From Beyond, that will give you, this is like your typical control build. You're going to try to control the board until you overwhelm them with either Thopter Spy Network tokens or From Beyond tokens, and then it's going to be hooking up with Helm of the Gods. So in this version, we run a full play set of Helm of the Gods because it's your best card to really get Thopter Spy Network online. We're also going to be running the Hangarback Walkers as a 4-of. It's just the best, it was the most played card at the Pro Tour. It just fits perfectly in every deck. And what I like about it in this deck is that it's just so much synergy with, they have to kill it twice for the Thopter Spy Network, otherwise we're going to start breeding more Thopters. And it's just the perfect card to stabilize, protect your board. If you even have to cast for 2 and then have it die and then leave back a 1/1 Thopter, that's usually 2 chump blocks you get in this format, and then eventually you'll find in the Stasis Snares and Silkwraps and whatnot to control the board until one of your later game threats comes down. So it's Helm of the Gods is usually when you equip it to a Thopter token, it's going to be like a 2 or a 3 turn victory. They'll be around 7-8 toughness usually, or power usually when you have so many enchantments out. We're running 4 Silkwraps, 2 Suspension Fields, 4 Stasis Snares, 4 Thopter Spy Networks, 4 From Beyonds, 4 Sigil Empty Thrones, a Starfield of Nyx, and 2 Quarantine Fields. So the vast majority of the deck is going to be enchantments. We're running Pilgrim's Eyes to help fix our mana base, plus they're another 1/1 Thopter that can get the Thopter Spy Network. They also have flying, so if you hook it up with Helm of the Gods, it's usually going to be a pretty decent threat. I originally had 4 in here. I cut down to 3 because a lot of times the targets are a little bit, if you're using fetch lands early, sometimes you don't have the right targets for Pilgrim's Eye, and it just ends up being a dead card. Just an expensive 1/1 for 3. But it's still a very pivotal part of this deck. Sigil continues to be one of the better cards of the deck. It makes any subsequent enchantment put out a 4/4 Angel. The original builder of this deck, give a shout out to this. Neil Meyerson is the original builder. He sent this list to me. If you have a list, a more rogue brew, you can send it to roguedeckbuilder@gmail.com. And I looked it over, and I think he was using, I'm not quite sure what his other win condition instead of Sigil of the Empty Thrones was. I'm thinking, I think he messed around with Gideon, or there's a few other cards that he put instead of Sigil, but I think Sigil works out really well in this deck. So let's talk about the sideboard. Sideboard's going to have 2 more suspension fields to bring these in against the decks that run Seed Rhinos or Tassigers or anything that's larger than 3 converted mana cost. You can swap these out for Silkwraps or even put these in addition. What I like about suspension field is that it does hit Mantis Rider, and so both your Silkwrap and suspension field will take care of the Mantis Rider. Then we have 4 Encase in Ice, because one of our weak matchups is going to be red aggro. So a Tarka red or any sort of Mardu red aggro or black red aggro. And so we have Surge of Righteousness and Encase in Ice that comes in versus those decks. Encase in Ice, you can tap down a red or green creature at flash speed, and it does not untap, so it's a great thing to put on a Mantis Rider or one of their landfall trample guys or anything like that. So Surge of Righteousness also gains you 2 life. This is my latest edition because I did seem to, the deck hasn't lost yet. I'm 7-0 with it on MTG 2-man queues, which is usually 2-man queues are slightly weaker of a field than the 8-man queues, but usually people that queue up in 2-mans, they play a more competitive deck. Like this deck is 3-0 versus Jeskai Black. It does really well with the current build against Jeskai Black. I've had cards like Utter Ends in the sideboard. I mean, you can go crazy with how many color combinations you have with Bant. I mean, even splashing red wouldn't be that hard in this deck, but since we have From Beyond, it was just too tempting to put an Eldrazi in the deck, because you can sacrifice From Beyond and search for an Eldrazi card. The coolest thing I've done is I had 6 mana and a From the Beyond out and was able to tutor up an Ulamog's Nullifier. The coolest thing about Ulamog's Nullifier is you can actually return cards from the exile zone, being like a Stasis Snare or a Silkwrap, back to their opponent's graveyard, and then counter a spell with it. So even if they do kill your Silkwraps or the suspension fields later on, there might not be anything underneath them because you've returned it to the graveyard. So we have 2 Ulamog's Nullifier. We bring them in. It originally had negates, and I just think the Ulamog's Nullifier did a lot better than negates. And Nullifier can actually take care of any spell, and usually you have 2 of your opponent's cards exiled somewhere, whether they've exiled them themselves or you've had a Silkwrap, Stasis Snare, etc. You'll have some cards to exile with the Nullifier. We're going to run one of Wasteland Strangler. It worked very well in the black-white version, so it's another thing we can tutor up. And a Ruination Guide that we can tutor up as well. So Ruination Guide is kind of fun because if you have has such a great synergy with From Beyond. So say you have a ton of Eldrazi tokens out, like we'd even say 3 or 4. You have 4 and a few Thopters from Hangarback Walkers, etc., etc. You can sacrifice the From Beyond to find a Ruination Guide and then play the Ruination Guide, and then it doubles all of your tokens. So say you have a Hangarback Walker that spewed out some tokens. Now they get a +1/+0, and you can actually use that as like a finisher, a kind of win condition to tutor up that Ruination Guide. So I'm not quite certain if it needs to be in the main board or not, just for that implication. But it's a very strong card in this deck because it does work with Thopter Spy Network and From Beyond and Hangarback Walker. Again, I don't know how I feel about Sigil Empty Throne, but it's just done wonders in the last few matchups that I've had. It's just, if you can even just cast 1 enchantment after the Sigil, then you get value out of it immediately. 2 is amazing value. And it's just a nice renewable resource that you can. It's in this one with From Beyond, Sigils, and Thopters, though it might just be too heavy on this many of things that create tokens. We'll just have to wait and see if we like it or not, that many. So you could add some more control-based cards. I think enchantment-wise we have what we want. Maybe Suspension Fields could come main board. But I think that we have plenty to really synergize with the Sigil. So we'll play this, see if we can continue the win streak. Again, I'm 7-0 right now, and we'll queue this up in some 2 minutes. This is Kevin with GatheringMagic.com. Thanks for watching.